Hey there, it's Christian from 7Gaming Network. I've got another new deck tech for you in this meta, which is just full of fun stuff. I've been having extreme amounts of fun with a deck that I haven't seen anybody else having to play with, even this pair of characters. So I'm thinking it's looking fairly original. How would you like to play a deck with the potential of doing, well, 16 damage in one resolution, and potentially even more once Legacies hits, and we might see 5 character teams? Well, this is the deck, so let me just load it up here for you, and we'll have a look. This deck is running with Bossk and Captain Phasma. So this is 2 characters with really powerful dice. Ignore Bosk's ability. Originally this deck did start as a sort of spray and pray sort of thing. We're trying to do as much just damage anywhere it liked as it could, and then doing things like Relentless Pursuit to shift it around. It wasn't great, and actually the more I've played with this pair of characters, the more it's morphed into this deck list that we see here. And it can roll very well and do stupendous things with damage. There's also a lot of synergy in this deck, and I love decks that have lots of synergy and ways of cards are just bouncing off each other. Anyway, these characters then. So 21 health, it's not masses. 11 on Bossk feels a lot more than 10 on Phasma. But look at these die sides. So we know how good the new 2-player Captain Phasma is. We've got a 1 damage, we've got a 2 damage, and of course we've got a mostly 2, quite a lot, 3 on that special. And Bossk actually essentially has the same amount of damage. He's got a 1, he's got a +2, and then a 3 for 1. So you've got these bigger sides that have got this sort of condition attached to them. And then you've got the 2 1s, and then you've got a 2 and a +2. So they're actually quite similar dice in the amount of damage that they can push out. However, Bosk's 3 for 1s, and with the kind of upgrades that you can run with these 2, it needs support. It needs ways of getting there. And so I've got a support package suite and some events to really make the most of these characters, and we'll have a look at those. There's really not a lot more to say about these characters, by the way. I mean, Phasma's focus is really nice for getting Bossk onto his 3 for 1 side. Other than that, they're just 4 really great dice that dish out a lot of damage by themselves. You know, when you've got your character dice that could potentially deal out, well, 10 damage themselves, and if you got to apply it in the correct way, potentially even 12, i.e. you could do the 2 3 for 1s with Bossk first and then do Phasma's 2 specials. Obviously that's Cloud Cuckoo Land, Super Magical Christmas Land, all happening at once, but it can do it. So let's have a look at some of the damage upgrades that we're going to run with this deck then. So we'll sort of include on the hunt, although it's also in there for sort of defensive-y type purposes. But these are the main ones that we're running. Now, the Riot Control Baton, it's amazing. We know it's amazing. It's so consistent because you've got that reroll. It's got so many lovely damage sides. It's got a 3 for 1. Again, you'll see that's a bit of a theme, paid 4 sides. We can deal with it in this deck. It's also got the 1 on there, and as we're running yellow, we've got the bait and switch. It works so nicely in this deck. And the big thing, of course, is that it's got redeploy. Now, the thing with your redeploy is the timing of using it. It becomes so important in this deck. But if you get it right and you get 2 lots of goes out of that control baton in dice in 1 round, wow, it can really up your tempo. Now the BD1 Cutter Vibro Axe, didn't put it in at the start. I then tried a 1 of, and my goodness, it went straight to a 2 really quickly. There are just so many decks running shields. That thing absolutely, I mean, it's doing 5 or 6 damage often if they've got 2 or 3 shields on, and you're hitting it for the 2 or the 3 for 1. I mean, that one die is doing so much damage, and there are so many shields around at the moment. As I think, as long as they don't print city cards like Vibroknife again, is probably going to be the case always. I think BD1 Cutter Vibroax is just a great card now in terms of dishing out the beats. Now we've got the Relby in there, and I'm coming to how you can do all this damage. It's not actually from that action, but one of the things I really do like about the Relby is that it's really consistent damage. I've done a whole video where I actually talked about this card. It's really consistent damage, and it does have this ability to just spread the damage out and just go bash. And in a meta that's playing a lot of 3 character decks now, you know, like 5 dice villain, I'm seeing a lot of sort of hero, you know, like Maserati and those kind of decks. Being able to just dish out a load of damage all at once, it's kind of the original reason I came to Bossk, and his Relby really works. The other thing as well, of course, is that those are 3 big chunky sides that if you don't need to just spread damage and you just need to target one down, well, it's brilliant for that as well. Now, Flamethrower, now this is in there because well, the special in there I think is quite good in the current meta. You've got lots of 3 and 4 character decks, as I talked about. You've got 3 damage sides, and you've got this 4 for 1. I mean, that's massive. That's a lot. And it's probably time to mention the event that's really going to do the business with this deck, and that is Anarchy. So let's just have a quick look at Anarchy, because it is exceptionally powerful when you get it off and in the right circumstances. Remove one of your yellow dice. That's why there are more yellow upgrades. There are obviously other good red upgrades that we could be running, but Anarchy is devastating when it goes off. And then you deal damage to each of an opponent's characters equal to the value showing on that die. So, when we're looking at these, we've got a lot of big sides. We've got the 3s here. We've got a 3 on that Relby, and the 2s if need be. And again, I mean, you're going to take it if it's against a 4 character deck and you get to deal 8 damage. You're probably quite happy with that Anarchy. The Flamethrower with the 4, I mean, that's just enormous and massive. Now the other card that this really works very nicely on, and I love all the theme of this. We've got Bossk, we're running Relby, we're running Houndstooth, of course we're running Houndstooth, and Anarchy going off on the Houndstooth. Remember, it's any value, it doesn't have to be a damage value. And we've got on Houndstooth just a 2-cost die, we've got 3, and we've got a 4. So, I mean, it can really stick some damage onto an opponent's team if you're able to Anarchy those big sides. Now, the other upgrade that we've got in here that I'll talk about is on the Hunt. On the Hunt, the main reason this is in here is, well, there's 2 reasons really. I've got 6 1-cost upgrades in this deck. Because we've got these 3-cost upgrades, because we've got quite a lot of pay for sides, the economy of the deck is a finely balanced thing. And a 1-cost upgrade is helping with the ramp, of course. On the Hunt is also incredible in the shield meta, and so what we've got is 4 cards that are really great in the Vibroax and the On the Hunt. They're really great in this meta. On the Hunt also doubles up, of course. It's such a great utility card, and it's one of the best cards in the meta currently. Remove all shields from a character. Spend 1 resource to remove one of its character upgrade dice. Now that's another spend ability effectively. This is why the support needs to be good in this, and why we're running things like Houndstooth and lots of resource potential. But this is more removal for us. And one of the areas that the deck has to run a little bit sketchier on is having lots of removal. So On the Hunt is forming part of our removal. So let's just talk about these 2 down here, because both of these actually directly contribute to our economy, but they also help us to get some damage out as well, which is quite nice. Now Extortion is pretty much straight up all about getting the money. So it's obviously got 2 resource sides on it, and we have got quite a lot of resource sides in the deck. So that's going to go off quite commonly. However, the 2 specials, which are really great, we've also of course got a lot of range sides. Phasma's got 2, Bossk's got 2. So just on the character sides, we can get extortion to go off. And we're going to steal the resource, which is really nice. It's so much better than just getting the 1 when it has this. I mean, you know, that's kind of like 2 dice. That's like a 1 disrupt and a 1 resource going off. So really quite handy, that one. Now the data pad works very well in this deck. That special is really gorgeous. Obviously it's got loads of resource sides, and we need that for our nice big upgrades and pay sides, but that special really makes a big difference in the fact that we can go special and in special extortion, gain a resource, take 1 from them, stop them being able to, they got 1 resource, we stop them likely being able to play any removal. Now I'll roll out Bossk. I've got 1 resource to pay for his side. Also, because it's they've got the special, we can turn it to Captain Phasma special, which is really cool on a character dice. The data pad to essentially turn Captain Phasma's die to 2 or the 3 damage side. We've also got the special on the flamethrower, and you know, so that can be 3 damage there, which is nice. And of course, we've got the special on the hunt, which could mean that we do 3 damage and remove a character die. I mean, there are so many great things that can happen out of data pad in this deck. It's a 1 cost, and when we've got the resources, when we've got off and on the hunt or an extortion or something, great, we just use it to ramp up into one of those nice big 3 crossed upgrades. So you can see there's a lot of synergy here. There is good economy, but it does take a bit of playing. I know I've played probably 15 games I've played 8 games with this list, you know, and it takes a little bit of just playing and getting your head around timings and so on, but when it can come together, it works very lovely. So we talked about Houndstooth. I'll just point out as well, of course, that you can, if you need to, remove a character dice to gain 1 resource. I mean, in a pinch, that can be okay. Let's say you've got some of the pay for upgrades on Phasma. You maybe take 1 of Bossk's dice away, you gain 1 resource, you perhaps rolled the 2 for 1 or the 4 for 2 resource side. Taking that 1 from Bossk's die might actually mean you can then resolve the Houndstooth dice for more resources, which allows you to pay for all the other stuff. So, I mean, most of the time you're not going to use it, but in a pinch it can be really handy. There's a lot of synergy, as I said, in this deck. There's a lot of ways to play it, and it's quite clever. Stolen Cash is there. It's slow. It is really slow, but it's a really great thing to see first round. Very nice first round. Where it becomes really excellent is because the economy needs to work in this deck, we are actually running Docking Bay. And of course, Docking Bay on Stolen Cash just allows us to keep looping it, which is really handy, especially as we can claim. It'll come out tapped. Start next turn, it's going to come untapped. So a nice little bit of play there. And of course, if we can get, you know, we can chuck a Houndstooth to re-roll into some damage, and then we claim our Docking Bay and get it out for 1. Happy days. Imperial HQ is really important to this deck. I mean, it's really important in this deck. It's one of the big things, of course, that's going to really do over a deck list like this is if you're playing against heavy control and they're going after disrupt. That'll be really nasty. Imperial HQ just defends you from that because, well, you're always going to be able to pay for those Bossk 3 for 1 sides or the BD Cutter Axe 3 for 1 sides. So Imperial HQ is very, very important in just you being able to get out your damage. And you can, of course, also use it on that Houndstooth to make sure you get the damage off. To get the resources off or the shields off or whatever you want it to, whatever you need it to do on that dice. Now let's have a look at a couple of the other events here. Now bait and switch is a fairly obvious one. I mean, Control button, it's got a resource side on it. Cutteract's got a resource side on it. Relby got a resource side on it. Flamer got a resource side on it. You know, all those big ones, and of course our 2 character dice, they've all got resource sides on. So bait and switch is fantastic in this deck. I mean, it's all these upgrades are just bait and switch is made for. So let's have a quick look at. So truce really allows you to be able to play out those 3 cost upgrades first round potentially, and certainly by second round. It's really nice if you've used up all your resources first round, but you've got like Imperial HQ into play, or there's a stolen cache, and then you end up getting to play truce, and you've just got the resources to play at maybe another upgrade, as well as still pay for Bosk's 3-for-1 or whatever it may be. That's when you really start being able to ramp the damage. It doesn't generally pay to truce the first turn and play one of those big upgrades. It can pay to truce and then be able to play out something like a data pad and an extortion and an on the hunt, and be absolutely set up for being able to ramp then on the next turn. That can work very nicely. Now the removal suite here, we're clearly going to play He Doesn't Like You because it's the best removal there is. Doubt I've put in there because it costs 0, and we do generate potentially quite a lot of resources, but we'd like to use them. We're using them for our damage and we're using them for our upgrades, or we're trying to get that 3 for a big fat anarchy going off. So doubt really plays into that, and the 1/4 portion, yeah, it hurts a little bit, giving the opponent that resource, and yes, it could allow them to, you know, play into some removal. You know, we need to use our nous when we're playing this, but there's quite a lot of decks, it feels like, around at the moment that are running lots of modified type damage. And so if you can break up those chains, get rid of those black sides and leave the blue stranded on the table, 1/4 portion is absolutely worth it in my opinion, especially if it keeps your Bossk alive for another round, who opponents normally... Actually, it has been 50-50 that I've experienced when I've been playing this as to who people are focused on, but if it keeps your character alive an extra round, that's great. Okay, so just some general tips, ways to sort of get the most out of the deck. I would heavily mulligan for these cards over here. I have, in quite a lot of matchups, often not, even if I've won the roll, I've ended up not taking my battlefield to take the 2 extra shields. And I often put the 2 extra shields onto Phasma, because what I found is that her dice are just so much easier to get off. I mean, you don't have to pay for them. And they're all black, like they're going to go off, and with all the upgrades that we're playing, you know, there is only the 1 blue side on these upgrades that we're playing here for damage. Obviously, on the HUD's got those as well, but Phasma's just going to be able to make that Relby go off much more regularly than Bossk is. And so actually, I kind of like it if an opponent goes for Bossk first. But I think if you're savvy, most opponents are going to leave Bossk until the end. That's fine then, because you've hopefully got all of this set up. You've got all of your economy engine on the go, and so paying for these upgrades, paying for Bossk's sides and his upgrades doesn't become too much of a problem. This is a deck that just won't work if you aren't getting some of these resource enablers in the game. I really would spend the first turn's resources on getting in Imperial HQ, or getting a Hound's Tooth out, on getting data pads and extortions into play, and then see what damage you roll out of your character dice. They're strong character dice, they're going to do the business. Try and get some damage out of them in the first round, but it's really not bad to take resources, especially if you're sitting there with some really nice upgrades in hand. So I'd be getting out as many economy engine type cards in that first round as possible, getting a bit of damage maybe. Second round then, you see, this isn't a deck that needs to do damage all the way through to sort of keep up. Because it has such big damage sides and it can make such big plays with that anarchy going off, you can, as long as you're surviving and you've got your characters in play until rounds, especially by round 3, I mean, you should be set up. There is eminently every possibility of you just getting off a massive anarchy on round 3, and you can then clear shields first with the on the hunts, or use the cutter vibro axe. Just be aware, if you anarchy the vibro axe, it doesn't have its effect, because anarchy says remove the die. You're not resolving that cutter axe die, but you can kind of just hold on. You might do a bit of damage in that first round, but it's second and definitely by third round that then you can just start walloping damage onto them. You can pick your target and really go for them, or if you're fortunate enough to be using this deck against a 3 and 4 character, then man, you want to make sure you get that anarchy off. You just got to set up for anarchy. But actually, I'll be brutally honest. If you've got your Houndstooth in play, I'm happy using a Phasma die to turn it to the 4 and then anarchy off for a massive hit against 2 characters and doing 8 damage. Yes, please. That's fantastic. That really is the long and the short of it. What I will say is that there are so many good cards you could also include in this deck. I mean, so many good cards you could include in this deck. Some of them would include Phasma's Blaster. That is such a big, chunky weapon, and what I really like about it is that, well, as I said, if you're playing in a competitive environment with this sort of deck, most people will know and work out to go for Phasma, and so Phasma's Blaster gets just that bit more value in the fact that it's going to be another redeploy weapon in. As to what I would change it for, I mean, you could just straight up change it for the Relby. And I mean, depending on how heavy your local meta is in actually playing shields, you might swap it for one of those BD1 cutter axe. But just remember, if you're bringing a really nice red upgrade like that, you are just lessening your options for anarchy going off. So just bear that in mind. Other cards that you can include in this, there are well, a number of strong sort of 3-cost upgrades. I did play with Scattergun. Let me just get Scattergun up actually, because I think Scattergun is one of those cards that, well, I mean, I guess is it fair to say that it's underrated? I don't know if it's actually underrated. I mean, I just do not see people playing that card, Scattergun. It's got terrible art on it. I'll definitely say that. But look, the way my brain works when I look at that is I see 4 damage sides. You've got a 2, you've got a +3. Well, when we're playing with Phasma and when we're playing with, okay, Boss only got the 1 black range side, but that's doing all right. And then it's got these 2 specials. Hello, specials. We've got, our data pad, and we've got quite a lot of other specials, so that sort of helps with the resolving and being a bit quicker. Deal 1 damage each up to 4 different characters. Well, look, that's you're often going to be playing against 2 characters. So this die says 2 + 3, disrupt, and a 2 damage and a 2 damage. That's pretty good, I would argue. And the fact that in this meta it could be 3 and it could even say 4. Now, yes, of course it's spread, but hey, we've got Bosk. He can shift a little bit around, and that can often be enough with, say, a Stormtrooper to just take him out, which is what obviously you're going to be using it against. So I feel like Scatterblaster is actually really not a bad include in this deck, and especially if you know you're going to be playing against lots of 3 and 4 character decks, I think that's a really good one to include. And that ability, again, you've got great ways of smoothing it out and making sure that damage just goes off. So I really don't mind a Scatter Blaster include if you were thinking of doing that. Now, you could include cards like Ruthless Tactics, which is it's a 0 cost, resolve 1 die and increase its value by the resource cost showing on it. So for instance, your BD1, your Vibro Axe becomes 2, 4 for 1 and 4 for 1. You know, your Bosk has a 4 for 1 side on him. Your Flamethrower becomes 5 for 1. I mean, it's good. It is really good. However, I was just finding that it's really handy, but it always just feels like, I mean, apart from Ruthless Tactics on the Houndstooth and getting 6 resources, which is brilliant, ultimately it was sort of a card in hand, resolve only 1 die, which is obviously a bit slower, and it adds 1 damage. I mean, it's just not quite, it wasn't quite there. But, you know, if you've got a limited card pool, I totally would recommend including something like that in your deck if you haven't got some of these other ones. I think your removal, you could definitely include more removal. I think having only 5 cards is a bit scary, and there's really only one that you can they roll out first. You know, from hand, just go get rid of that in the 1/4 portion. You know, Doubt obviously is a little bit more sketchy on that, and on the hunt, and he doesn't like you, require you to get your dice into the pool and have something to be able to use it. So, like, that is where this deck is weaker. Now, I mean, I'm showing you this after I've maybe played sort of 20, 25-ish games, like something like that with it. And so there's definitely a lot more tweaking that you can do with it. But I think one of the areas that's still going to be open to being tweaked a lot is your support suite, your economy engine. And maybe there's just a little too much. I mean, that's not been my experience. I generally need to use it. And you know, I'm never sat there with 5, 6, 7 resources with this deck, which you could sort of maybe think, you know, looking at all of this, well, maybe there's quite a lot of resource generation potential there. No, you tend to end up using it all, and so anything in terms of removal that's going to cost 1 or more, I'm not so sure about. Anyway, that is Bossk and Phasma. I've been calling it Bosky Phazzers, and it's a lot of fun when you get these big crazy plays off, you know, sort of revolving really around Anarchy, and just the general spikiness of it. The amount of times I've rolled Bossk, you know, with an upgrade or 2 on, and he's doing 7, 8 damage in a single resolution. You know, just even with a 1 upgrade on, you know, that there is a lot of damage potential in this deck. What I'll do is I'll upload a bit of play with the deck, so you can see what it can sort of perform like against some really handy decks, and just sort of see it in the wild, as it were. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that, guys. If this is the sort of content you enjoy, then you may want to get involved in the Patreon. There's a great group of us. A load of my patrons have been sort of doing a bit of testing with me on this, which has been really cool fun. And so yeah, if you love this stuff, then totally it'd be great to have you involved, and you can become one of the troopers on SGN for just $1 a month. So yeah, and just by sort of just by way of mentioning, you might not be aware of podcasts like Knights of Ren, and if you guys are really into trying to break into competitive Destiny and learning about the world of this amazing game we play, then Knights of Ren really are right up there, and so I totally recommend you go and have a listen to them. Finally, I will just a little shout out to swdestiny.com. who host a lot of our videos, and you'll find on there loads and loads of really cool articles written by some of the very best players at Destiny. So another little stop to go and check out. Anyway, until next time, keep enjoying your Destiny.